Hello, everyone, and welcome to JobBoardGeek, the podcast about the business of connecting candidates and employers. I'm Jeff Dickey-Chasins, your host, the Job Board Doctor, and with me today is the illustrious Steven Rothberg of College Recruiter. Hi, Steven. How you doing?
I am good. Illustrious. I'm kind of feeling like I'm going to start getting names like hurricanes pretty soon. You keep coming up with a different one each week.
You know, as I've said before, I had to put my English major background to work somehow. So, um, at any rate, today we are very lucky to have Jennifer Johansson of Placed here with us. And she has a service for the hospitality industry that I think is really, really interesting and has some really cool features. But first, I thought, Stephen, we could chat a little bit about something that happened this week to someone that I think we both know.
Yeah.
The SeekOut, the Seattle-based company, became a unicorn. They basically got some new funding, and their valuation is over $1 billion. And so I thought that was pretty cool. They're part of what I call people aggregators. I'm not sure if anyone else really
Mm.
uses this term, but I started using this term back around 2010, 2011 when they started showing up. Basically, SeekOut takes a whole bunch of data about people gathered from a lot of different sources like GitHub and the general internet and just various and sundry databases. They append information to it, and then companies can use this data to source candidates, and they've got literally hundreds of millions of names in there. And I went and looked in my database because I've been tracking this for a while, and I found something kind of interesting, and maybe it speaks to the future of Seek Out. I looked at some of the pioneers that were in the people aggregating space. The first one was TalentBin. Well, they got
Uh-huh.
bought by Monster. And then there was Connectifier, created by a couple of ex-Googlers, and they got bought by LinkedIn. And then more recently, Swoop Talent got bought by SAP. One of the ones that's still out there that has not been bought is Telenia, and it was created by Gal Amag, who's also the fellow that created Real Match, which turned into PandoLogic. And I thought this was interesting that all these companies got bought or rolled into other things. And then, sure enough, I'm reading the Seek Out information, and they're saying, well, we're going to use our money to actually add a new service where companies can use our tool to search their own ATSs for people. Because, if you're a big company, you've probably got thousands and thousands of names in there. And I've seen several of the other people aggregator companies do the same thing. Hiring Solved is a good example of that. And I just think it's interesting because they all sort of started from the same place, and now they're kind of ending up in the same place. What are your thoughts on this, Stephen?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, but I don't think that their direction of Seek Out is to be a people aggregator. I think that's where they've come from, but I don't think that's where they're going.
Hmm.
And I think that the investment is more a reflection of where they're going than where they've come from or even where they are. So, first of all, the CEO, I had the pleasure of speaking with him at a TA Tech conference. I think it was a TA Tech conference probably 3 years ago. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and Seacoat was, let's call it, in embryonic stage at that point.
Right.
I mean,
I
it was
remember that.
live. I think they had some customers, but it was early, 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 early. Um, Very impressive. I don't recall if I had learned prior to meeting with him or shortly after. And there was a group of us. It wasn't a one-on-one, but he was basically Bill Gates's right-hand man.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so he's got street cred right there with virtually everybody other than the criminally insane. And I heard him on an interview with that George Laroque of WorkTech just recorded and released. George is on our board of advisors, one of the smartest guys in the M&A and investment world where money is coming from. Um, and according to that interview, their revenues right now are relatively low, $25 million
Mm-hmm.
dollars a year, growing at probably several fold a year. So their valuation is based upon where they're going to be 5 years from now, much more so
Right.
than where they've been the last year, because you don't become a $1.2 billion valuation company with $25 million in revenue. The numbers just don't work. But if that 25 million is going to be 250 million in a few years, then absolutely the 1.2 billion is worth it. So I think that there's a lot of valuation being placed upon their leadership team, which is very justified. And I see their future as being not in the job board space. Anoop, actually, the CEO, Anoop, said in that interview that job boards suck. And I actually replayed it. It's like, did he really just say that? Which is interesting because we'll get into that conversation with Jennifer in a little bit too. But when it's like, yeah, no, he really said job boards suck. I don't see their future as being in the talent acquisition space, driving candidates to employers, as much as internal mobility and really helping to reshape the workplace. If companies
Mm-hmm.
can better retain talent, companies don't have to recruit as much talent, and companies will be more productive. And I think that's the brass ring, not the company, but that's the brass ring that Anoop is going after. And if he's even partially successful, that'll be awesome for all of us because he will make the world a better place.
Yeah, I agree. And so we're going to put a marker on that, Stephen, and we'll check back in a year and see what's really happened. But yeah, he's a very impressive person, and I think he's building an impressive company. And speaking of another impressive company, today we have as our guest Jennifer Johansson. Her company is called Placed. It's a app that helps hospitality organizations hire people, and it does it in a different sort of way. So, welcome to Job Board Geek, Jennifer. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I was wondering if you could just give us a very sort of quick rundown on where you come from, how you got into this space, and just a sort of a top level view of Placed.
Yeah, of course. I'm Jennifer. I'm the founder of Placed. Initially from Sweden, I moved to London, UK about 12, 13 years ago. I started working in the hospitality sector when I first moved to London. I was working at Soho House initially and then moved to another company that was sort of indirectly working with hospitality businesses, building up relationships, sat in a lot of meetings with managers
Hmm.
and venue owners and had conversations. And I think every time the sort of like staffing issues came up. So not from a recruitment background, hospitality background, sort of saw firsthand what an issue this is for that sort of high churn service sector. Started looking into it a little bit. In the UK, hospitality is the largest employer of people under 25 years old. And yet you're looking at
Mm.
how they recruit and it's staff needed signs and windows, very old school job boards, but also sort of, print your CV, come along to an interview. And you look at these audience they try to attract, the under 25, the very like mobile first generation. They don't have CVs. They definitely don't have printers at home to print a CV and go to an interview. And that's very
Right.
much where I saw the need for Placed.
Interesting. I think I was telling you before we started recording that I went to your website and it says your job's your way. We all deserve better than job boards. And actually, believe it or not, even though we call this a Job Board Geek podcast, I think both Stephen and I think that traditional job boards kind of suck.
Yeah.
They just, there's a design whose time has passed. So I think that's one of the things that I really found that was interesting about Placed is that you do say, we don't focus on CVs, we focus on the skills. And I thought one of the interesting things that you had in there was the ability for candidates to get in and actually do some upskilling of themselves. Can you tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the sectors that we cover, hospitality, retail, sort of like broader service sectors. I think there are
Hmm.
sectors they don't often recruit like experience, past experience, and skills is often not needed, whereas personality and attitude is super super key. What we're doing in Place is really putting that candidate first. So moving away from CVs, I think, you can be an amazing bartender, an amazing chef. You may not know how to write an amazing CV, and that sometimes can eliminate your chances of getting a job, which isn't correct in the service sector. So candidates, they download the app, they go through various different questionnaires and quizzes. We're trying to make it a lot more interesting. We're trying to understand them a lot more. What sort of values are you looking for? Are you looking for career progression, or is it more of a summer gig, for example? Based on that, candidates create their profiles and then automatically get matched to suitable employers. Once they've obviously matched employers, can start applying for jobs. As you say, there are various different other bits at Placed as well. So we've got a community section where we host a lot of content, co-branded content, that we put together with our employers. And clients as well, so like interview tips, better understanding of different companies, and then onto these sort of like upskilling quizzes. So those quizzes are actually put together by the companies as well, so it's allowing an employer to connect with the future workforce in a different way. They could be like a fun fact quiz, for example. We obviously work with a lot of like casual dining chains, big hospitality groups that might have like interesting history or interesting menus, so they're putting that on a quiz. We do have some more like general quizzes around customer service roles, chef roles, barista roles as well for candidates to learn and educate themselves about the sector before applying for roles.
Interesting.
That's awesome. The I love the fact that it's not just a connector between employers and candidates, which I think is sort of the traditional job board model. It's really making those candidates better, which just helps everybody up and down. Well, no, pun not intended until now, because I'm still going to go forward with it. But it's everybody up and down the food chain. Ha 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 ha. So, a question for you. One of the big differences between the market where Jeff and I sit in the U.S. and the UK market is that in the U.S., staffing companies are almost an afterthought. Very few candidates will find a job through a staffing company. And in the UK, it seems very much the opposite. Staffing companies do a lot more of the recruitment, the sourcing, et cetera, for a lot of the employers. For Placed, is it the actual employer? Is it the staffing company? Sort of like who's your audience on the customer side, on the employer side? Are you selling mostly to staffing companies, mostly to the end employer, combination of both?
So we actually only send to selling to employers directly. We don't allow staffing or agencies sort of on the platform. I think, again, coming back to this core focus on candidate first and the candidate experience, connecting with the employer directly, we believe you are going to have a better experience than through an agency or a staffing company who might think a little bit more about their own margins and those sort of things. So that's why we're doing that. Second of all, the way that employers are sort of building when they sign up to Placed, similar to the candidates, they also go through quizzes and questionnaires to build their employer profiles. A lot of sort of like employer branding is sitting on there as well. And that's also something that we feel staffing agencies wouldn't really help.
I'm kind of curious, this is sort of tied to that. In terms of the revenue model for Placed, how do employers pay? Are they basically paying for a certain license for a certain period of time, or are they allowed certain number of slots where they can advertise positions, or how do you guys do that?
So we've got a subscription model for our employers. So our employers basically pay for the access. It's based on how many vacancies you're looking to hoist on your brand page at any one time. And then we've got sort of like different tiers depending on what you can access on the platform. So we've got absolutely, you can access your applications coming in. We also got a matches feature, which is kind of like the job board's CV database, which is a little bit separate. It's more filtered that you could access. You can go in and like headhunt candidates straight away. And then, as I mentioned, this sort of like, employer brand that you build up and hoisting staff testimonials and really showing off what it's like to work for your company. And then our team internally help companies to build that out as well.
Okay. So And this actually brings me to the other thing that I always am curious about. How have you built your audience on the candidate side? You know, how do candidates even find out about Placed, and the same thing on the employer side? How do employers discover you guys?
So on the candidate side, I think this is also what sets us apart from a lot of job boards as well. I think we find all our candidates through social media and a lot of
Hmm.
targeted Facebook ads. We do a lot of TikTok advertising, Snapchat. Again, the audience that we focus on is very much the under 25, the mobile first generation, as I mentioned. These are the channels that are on every day and all day. I think it's different in a sense because it's a lot more targeted and it's a little bit more passive. I think job boards,
Hmm.
they rely heavily on SEO and people going in and searching for roles, which absolutely
Right.
is great because you want to connect with candidates who are looking for a job. But what if you can actually connect with candidates before they've got into the stage where they start searching for jobs? So coming
Hmm.
in, trying to get the candidates on a little bit earlier. Again, coming back to our like community section of the app, you don't just have to come to Placed to find your next job. You can actually educate yourself, connect with the sector, consume our content, etc. So that's the
So
the,
does
the
that?
main driver. Sorry, Steven.
Oh, I was just gonna say. So does that mean that if College Recruiter were to start to invest heavily in TikTok videos, that I could convince my wife that that's actually a work function when I'm spending time on TikTok?
College
uh,
recruitment, absolutely.
Excellent.
I have a feeling it probably works better for Place than it would for you, Stephen. But who knows? How about on the employer side? Because I assume that's going to be a pretty different approach, right?
Yeah, I think we're quite lucky in the sense on the employer side. I think we've got a lot of word of mouth. I think we had early
Mm.
on happy customers. There was sort of small industries spreading the word. 62% of our revenue at the moment is coming from inbound leads. So the likes of McDonald's came booked a
Wow.
demo via our websites. We're seeing a lot of these great success stories. On top of that, we've got a brilliant sales and marketing team. So we do obviously reach out to employers as well. We do email marketing, automated, and then we've got our sales team who's connecting with people on LinkedIn and reaching out to them.
So, I guess the one thing that has me a little bit curious, and certainly in the U.S., I think I'm pretty sure this is the case in the U.K. I know it is in the EU. The hospitality sector, the retail sector, all the service sectors have been horribly hit by the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering what effect that had for you guys, and or has it had any effect?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, by the time COVID hit, we were actually only focusing on the hospitality sector. So as a business,
Oh.
together with COVID, all the restaurants sort of went into lockdown. We lost our revenue overnight because we decided to pause all our subscription for our customers to sort of help them out. That was also the year when we started going into other sectors. We started working with the care sector, for example, the retail
Mhm.
sector, supermarkets. And I think we realized there's a lot of these other industries that were very interested in finding hospitality candidates. And then obviously fast forward 2021, big year for Placed and probably not just our sector, but the bounce back year, right? So I think recruitment overall was really busy last year. I think for the hospitality and the retail sector, it's not obviously we've had Brexit in the UK as well. So I don't think the
Right.
pandemic is it's been looming for many years before Brexit as well. Obviously everyone knew it was coming. So I think there's been an issue for many years that no one really dealt with. I think one thing we find quite interesting and great is we speak to so many like HR directors and recruitment managers, and I think they all saying like it's a very difficult time, but it's also exciting because for the first time in so long, this is actually a problem at like board level. CEOs are involved with recruitment and talent attraction,
Hmm.
and so it's really the right timing and time to do something new. It's obviously what we feel.
Okay, that makes sense.
Jennifer, maybe you can talk a little bit about your growth plans, because it sounds like, at least in part due to COVID, you went into other industries, which makes a ton of sense. A ton of those hospitality people ended up in working in nursing homes, doing somewhat similar work. hourly paid, etc. So it's fantastic that you were able to help them. Are you looking at branching out to the continent, to outside of the EU, to Asia, North America, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. We definitely have international expansion on the horizon, and we are in the middle of our next funding round. And following that, it's going to be another 12, 18 months, quite focused on the UK. We work with a lot of chains and sort of groups that have sites across the UK. So having that like strong UK footprint is super important for us before going outside of the UK. But no, absolutely. I think, yeah, what you're talking about inside and outside of Europe as well, especially due to Brexit, looking at how can we actually, maybe go in and help workers in the UK, in Europe coming back to the UK, just when it comes to like visas and those sort of things as well.
Mm.
So Jennifer, I have one final question for you, and then we're going to have to close up. But I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and the header picture showed a bus with a big ad on the side. And I'm just wondering, have you done a lot of offline advertising to promote the site?
No, yes and no. That was our first out of home campaign. We actually did, right after COVID when everything started to open up. Did you see what it was, what it said on the bus? Did you see
No, I didn't see. What did it say?
it said, we had a few different ones. I think one said, "Step aside, job boards, a new sheriff is in town." We were trying to make a bit of a statement.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I guess I should have read it more carefully. But oh well, that I think it's great. I think it's great. I'm actually an advocate for getting rid of the word job board because it's so not descriptive of 90% of what's out there. But it's like Band-Aid. It's one of those words that everyone uses now, and although I guess if you're in the UK, you call them plasters, right? Not Band-Aids. Yeah. So much for that idea. Oh, well. Well, Jennifer, thanks so much for coming on. And if any of the listeners want to get a hold of you and give you a ring, how do they reach you?
LinkedIn is probably the best way to reach me. So yeah, definitely feel free to reach out. We'd love to have conversations, job seekers or employers or other similar businesses alike as well. So Jennifer Johansson and Placed app on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks
And
so much.
Steven, if people want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yeah, when I'm not walking my dog, they can email me at Steven, Steven, at collegerecruiter.com.
Yeah, well, so that's the end of this dog walking episode of Job Board Geek. Be sure to subscribe to us via RSS, Apple, Spotify, Google, et cetera, all those great places. My name is Jeff Dickey-Chasins. I'm the Job Board Doctor, and you've been listening to the only podcast that focuses on the business of connecting employers and candidates. That's all for now. We'll see you again next time.